following is a presentation of KSL Sports. Hello, Cougar Nation.
Handoff middle. First down. Touchdown. And listen to the Cougar Nation.
Every Monday night, we break down the Cougars' last game and look ahead to next week. Cougar Nation, brought to you by Central Bank. Here's BYU insider Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte on Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio.
Good evening. Welcome on in, Cougar Nation, to your show, Cougar Nation. Mitch Harper, Matt Baiamonte with you. We're talking BYU basketball on this loaded day. It's Martin Luther King Day, national championships going on. Notre Dame's got an early lead, and inauguration of President Donald Trump. Busy day, and squeezed into all of this is recapping what transpired for BYU basketball over the weekend against the Utah Utes. And Matt, it was another setback for BYU in what's been a difficult start to Big 12 play.
Another close loss, and I think a lot of BYU fans prefer to focus on everything that's happening today, the inauguration, as you mentioned, the celebration of Martin Luther King Day. I think a lot of BYU fans want to turn the page, but we can't. There's still a lot of Big 12 basketball, Mitch. We got to figure out what's going on with this team.
And we want to hear from you, Cougar Nation, what you feel is wrong with this team, and also answer our question of the day. Who needs to be the guy BYU turns to at the end of games? Call us up, 801-575-8255. We're taking your phone calls over the next hour, 801-575-8255. If you're not the question, you can share your thoughts on this BYU basketball team. Let's dive into this, though, right now with our takeaways.
Cougar Nation takeaways. Mitch and Matt analyze BYU's last week of play and what it means for the next week.
Overtime loss for BYU at the Huntsman Center, 73-72. It was a nail-biter, and look, Big 12's got to be thrilled, first off, with how these BYU-Utah rivalry games are playing out. 1-point games in both football and men's basketball thus far. They've been epic finishes. BYU fans, I think, enjoyed a little bit more of that Will Ferrin action in football more than what took place in the Huntsman Center over on Saturday night. But what's your big takeaway coming out of that loss to the Utes, Matt?
This team has no identity, Mitch, and that makes it hard to know where to go, who to give the ball to at the end of the game. We saw in overtime, every single play in the final minute went to someone else. They tried Richie, they tried Dawson, they tried Foose. Eventually, it was Yegor at the buzzer trying to make a play. They don't know what to do, and I think that stems from this team doesn't know who they are. Last year, they had a clear identity, and I think that's the number one reason, Mitch, they were able to exceed expectations. Did they have flaws last year? Of course. Of course they did. But game in and game out, they knew what they were trying to do. They were trying to get up and down, fast tempo, shoot as many threes as possible. And on nights that they went in and you made double-digit threes, you were very hard to beat. On nights when they didn't, you lost in the tournament to Duquesne. But at least at the end of the day, you knew what you were doing. This team, throughout the game, there's multiple versions of this team. There's the low post team with Foose, which is heavy isolation. They work it around the perimeter, dump it down low. Foose will either kick it out on a double or back in and put up a hook shot in the post. When he's out of the game, they're running a lot of high pick and roll with Keita and Yegor. I feel like, man, this team really needs to know, what do we hang our hat on? And we've heard Kevin Young say things like, we got to be gritty. I want us to compete every possession. Those are great things, and you need to do those things. But that's not an identity. When you think of an identity, Mitch, across the great teams that basketball's ever seen, and I'll use the NBA as an example. Shaq and Kobe, they had an identity. Golden State Warriors, they had an identity. Cleveland with LeBron, you knew what they were going to do. You knew in any given moment, you knew who the ball was going to and what they were going to run. That's not the case with this team. It was clear as day in overtime that they didn't know who to go to. They didn't know what to do. And because they don't have an identity, they're losing close games.
BYU falls to 11-6 overall in the season, 2-4 in Big 12 play. And I think you're right. There is a lack of identity with this team right now. And I think what was surprising in that game against Utah for me was the poor defense, particularly in the post in the second half. Utah's Ezra Asor had 26 points, 11 of 15 from the field. It was basically just a highlight reel of layups, just underneath the bucket, and just goes up, wide open, layup after layup. It was poor defense in the post, and Kevin Young was disappointed in that defense in the middle of the second half and played a big role in BYU losing that game.
Hard-fought game. They made plays down the stretch. We came up short. I thought our defense in the second part, or the middle part of the second half, let us down a little bit. We adjusted, and they made plays.
They did, and Utah ended up shooting 45% from the field. BYU only 38%. Both teams couldn't knock it down from beyond the arc. 27% for BYU, 26% for the Utes, and then free throws. We'll get to that, I'm sure, at some point this show, because that was a big piece of this. But another takeaway I have from this game, Matt, is that this kind of goes along the lines of what you were saying. This team doesn't appear to be getting better. 6 consecutive games with pretty much the full personnel. Since Yegor came back, Richie came back, the start of Big 12 play, this team's not getting better. In Utah and TCU, the last 2 games where they've lost, had setbacks on the road, those are teams that I think BYU's got more talent than. Just going to get it done on the road, and they cannot figure things out late in games, and that just leaves me concerned about BYU going forward because they're not getting better. They're losing the games that you would think that they're going to be the favorite in. This schedule is going to ramp up here significantly in February. Time is ticking on this BYU team making a run and getting back on the good side of the bracketology projections.
When was the last time this team looked good? Like, when was there a 10-minute stretch where you felt like on both ends of the floor they were playing high-level basketball? Like, I can't even remember the last time that this team played a really solid stretch of basketball. I mean, maybe a little Arizona State first half.
First half against Oklahoma State last Tuesday. I thought they were pretty solid, but then they had that lapse in the second half where it's a 22-2 run by Oklahoma State, and they're back in it. It's a one-possession game, so there's just it feels like when they take a step forward, there's a couple steps back, and you're always playing catch up with this team. And so, yeah, it's been a while since probably that New Year's Eve against Arizona State where this team has looked really good.
My second takeaway, free throw shooting is killing this team. 4 of 10 against Utah. They missed multiple front ends. Now, I think there's a lot of fans out there who want to point the finger at the officials. The free throw disparity, it was significant in that game. I don't believe that's the reason they lost, because if they had just made 7 of 10 free throws, they probably win that basketball game. The way that game was officiated, it certainly played a role in the game. I'm not going to say it didn't, but BYU had multiple opportunities to win that game despite the questionable officiating. And when you get to the line, I mean, Trevin Nell, with under 10 seconds to go in the game, is setting a screen and gets fouled. If you just make those free throws, you likely win that basketball game. Despite all the craziness, all the lack of defense at points, the poor shooting, if you just go and do the simple things, the little things, to quote Steve Young, one of my favorite Steve Young clips from the NFL Films vault is he's talking to Terrell Owens, and he's like, it's the little things. Like, get back to the huddle on time. Don't complain to the refs. Just do the little things. That's how we sustain drives. The little things. Make a crisp pass. Make a free throw. Do the little things. And the free throws are those. They're 30 of 50 in their 3 conference losses. Outside of Houston, they got blown out. I'm not counting that one. But if you look at the winnable ones, TCU, 14-19. Texas Tech, 12 of 21. Utah, 4 of 10. That's 60% in these losses that they just shoot 80%. We're having a very different conversation, Mitch. So free throw shooting, what should be easy is hard for this team, and that is a problem.
BYU finished 4 of 10, and Trevin Nell, that was his only attempt of the night, and he missed it. And, that's going to be something that lives with Trevin, unfortunately, probably for a while. I mean, he will have a chance to get revenge against Utah, and this whole BYU team will in March. But, man, that's just one of those shots that many Cougar fans will probably remember. And hopefully Trevin's got a chance to redeem himself and get a chance to knock that down, that big shot in a big game in the future in the schedule, because, as we know, the Big 12's got so many great opportunities, but they've got to start winning games because, yeah, it'll be great when you get the chance to play Iowa State, but ultimately, if you're a 5-3 11 team in Big 12 play, you're not going to be in the conversation for the bracket. And you got to start winning these games now. And taking care of business at the free throw line helps that cause. BYU right now is not shooting great. 13th in the Big 12 conference for the entire season in free throw percentage during league play, near the bottom as well. So BYU's got to be able to knock down their shots because it has just not been going well for them. 66% in conference play from the charity stripe. We'll take our first time out right now. We'll continue to talk more BYU basketball and answer the question of the day, who needs to be the go-to guy for BYU at the end of games. We want to hear from you as well. 801-575-8255. Cougar Nation sponsored by Central Bank, serving Utah County for over 133 years with trusted service, modern technology, and personalized care. Central Bank, proud sponsor of Cougar Nation, right here on KSL News Radio.